Hey everybody, welcome back for another video. Today I am doing the name game tag, and I wasn't actually tagged in this by a content creator, but my friend Jane watched Treebeard's video of this, and she thought it was a really cute idea and it was a fun video to watch, and so she asked me if I would do one. So I watched his video, and sure enough, it was a great video. It was really fun to watch, and I thought I will definitely do this because I think it's a fun idea. So basically the concept is very simple. You take all the letters of your name and you make book recommendations with titles that begin with the first letter of your name, second letter of your name, so on and so forth. So since I only have 7 letters in my name, I decided to do what Treebeard did. And he did, the first list was books that he recommends or favorites that correlate with the letters. And then the second list is books that I want to read based on those letters. So I'm going to do it that way. The only parameters I set for myself was to only include authors once a piece. And then also I'm kind of not worrying about words like a and the, because a lot of titles start with the, and that would really limit myself on like books I couldn't include. So I didn't really worry about a and the. So for my first letter, which is M, of course, I chose Malice by John Gwynne, which is book 1 of Faithful and the Fallen. And that's one of my favorite fantasy series, you guys. So of course I'm going to recommend book 1 to people. And I personally love beginnings. I love book 1s. And this one is, you're going to get a lot of introduction time. You're going to spend time getting to know the characters, which, side note, this does have one of my favorite POV styles, which is like character-specific POVs. But you're going to spend a lot of time getting to know who these people are. You're going to get to know the world, the lay of the land, what kingdoms are aligned with who. It's a lot of setup because it's important for the story. And towards the end of the book, it definitely picks up in pace and action, and it ends on a cliffhanger. But man, the story really takes form in books 2, 3, and 4. It's a 4-book series total. But book 1 is still a really awesome book, and I just love all the time and care that is really put into making sure that the reader really understands what's happening with, because he does cool things with the religion and the politics and the magic and the world building, but you need to understand it before the story would even have any meaning behind it. So book 1 does its job, and I really, really like it as a book 1, and the series as a whole, like I said, is a favorite. So definitely check this out if you haven't already. For it's not number 2, it's letter A. I did kind of already break that rule because I am going with something that begins with A, and that is A Game of Thrones, which is book 1 of A Song of Ice and Fire, of course. And not only is A Song of Ice and Fire one of my favorite series ever, but this is one of my favorite books ever as well. And as you can see, that this is a very well-worn, loved copy because I've read it several times. And like I said before, I love beginnings. I love book 1s, and this is the perfect book 1 in my opinion. So forever a favorite for me, and something I will never not encourage people to read. Say whatever you want about the TV show, say whatever you want about the fact that the series is unfinished. I will still recommend this to people, and I will still reread it and continue to be a huge fan of it forever because, incomplete or not, like, I think it's just that good. So yeah, that's one of my favorite books ever. For D, M-A-D, I'm going to talk about Dune. So Dune is something that I read for the first time last year, and then I read it for the first time in 2020, and then I reread it in 2021. And I'm hoping that this will be something that I continue to reread consistently for the rest of my life, because I imagine that I will take something new from this story every time I read it. So if you are into amazing politics and world building, that's just I've never read anything like it, you guys. I love this book. If you're a fantasy fan and you want to get into sci-fi, I think this is a great place to start, because I stand firm in the belief that this should be categorized very heavily as sci-fantasy. Because sure, it's sci-fi. Of course it's sci-fi. It's a sci-fi classic. But guys, there's magic in this book. You know, there are fantasy elements that are so strong in this, and that's why I think I'm so drawn to it, is because it's just the perfect blending of two things I love, and it's just masterful. So I plan to continue reading some books that follow this one in the series, because I've only ever read book 1, but book 1 is a favorite for me. For my letter I am going to talk about It, of course, by Stephen King. This is probably my favorite Stephen King book. It's hard to pick because I have a few that are just really, really special to me. Gosh, damn, look how big this book is. It's such a thick, huge book. But I read this in October of 2020, and I have not stopped thinking about it since. Like, that's not an exaggeration. Not a day goes by that I don't think about this book, because it is a story that just lives rent-free in my head now. It's so much more than I thought it was going to be. And even before I started the book, I knew that it wasn't just a creepy clown book. I knew there was more to it than what meets the eye, because I'd seen the movies and stuff like that. But guys, if you've never read this book, then you don't know the story, because this is a story that could never be captured on screen, because it's just so perfectly told on these pages. So if you aren't afraid of feeling a little uncomfortable while you read, a little scared, but mostly very uncomfortable, but are willing to experience those things in exchange for the story of a lifetime, then like this is it. It is it. One of my favorite books of all time. And if you've never read this, like, let's talk about why not, because I want to convince you to read it. It's very, very good. All right, next is the letter S. And for the letter S, I chose The Shadow Rising. This is book 4, Wheel of Time. This is probably, if I had to pick one, probably my favorite Wheel of Time book. I've never sat down and done that. I've never ranked them. But it would either be number 1 or number 2 favorite Wheel of Time book for me. This is the point that the world really explodes and the story just takes on a life of its own, in my opinion. I loved books 1 through 3. In fact, book number 2 is another maybe favorite of mine. But in my opinion, the story just changes so much at this point, and you just learn so much more about who these characters are, where they come from, why they are the way they are, and the cultures just really come alive in this book. And I love how there's just several distinct storylines, but it doesn't feel like too much, because the way it's presented by Robert Jordan is just really, really consumable. And so I don't know. It's hard for me to pick a favorite, like I said, but I knew exactly what S book I wanted to talk about, because when I think of favorites, The Shadow Rising is always tops that list. It's just such a great book. For the letter O, I chose Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, and this is book 3 of the Stormlight Archives, and I loved this book. It's not perfect. There are some things in it that I didn't love, some storylines I thought got a little exhausting, but overall, this is a book I love. And one thing I like so much about it is all the time we get to spend with a character named Dalinar. So each of these books has a different character that they kind of focus on their flashbacks and their past, and the story just becomes more alive and more rich the more you're getting these POVs of different things that happened in the past from all these different perspectives. So I love that storytelling technique he uses, and it's just really, really impactful, and it works really well. But this one, like I said, you get that extra time with a character named Dalinar, who's a favorite of mine, and he just has such a complex past, and I just thought it was so cool. And there are some moments in this book that made me like get up and like fist pump and like shout. Like, have you ever read a book that made you do that? Like, you get those every now and then, but those moments are rare, that a book actually gets like a physical reaction out of me. And this has a moment like that is just like chills, goosebumps, mind-blowing. So Oathbringer is an awesome book, and if you haven't started the Stormlight Archives, like I've said, I'm a little down on it right now just because I didn't love the last book, but if I'm being honest, the first 3 books were just so good that it's still a strong recommendation for me, and I'm very interested to see how he's going to wrap this arc up in the years to come, because, you know, he's built so much cool stuff here, and I want to see where it's going. And the last letter in my name is N, and so I am going to recommend and talk about Nevernight, because I don't know if it's a top favorite series of all time for me necessarily, but it's definitely one of my most favorite things that I've read recently. I binged this series in the month of January. I was going to read 1 book a month, but I read all 3 of them basically back to back because they were such page turners. Really cool story. I love the way he writes. It's, you know, his dialogue is funny. He says terribly crude things, but it just totally works in the setting. And this story was awesome. And I'm just, these are, especially the characters, man, like there are characters in here that are going to be favorites for me. Like even if the series doesn't necessarily land as a favorite of all time for me, I could see some of these characters ending up on favorites lists for me. So maybe a little bit of recency bias there, but I don't think so. Nevernight is a fave and I definitely recommend it. And if we're playing categories, I'm pretty sure I would get double points for the double N and Nevernight, right? Now, for the second half of my list, like I said, I'm going to run through the same letters of my name, but I'm just going to do real quick books that I am hoping to read or that are on my TBR. So for the letter M, that was the most difficult one for me. Like I, for the life of me, could not think of a book that I am like actively planning to read or hoping to read that started with the letter M, but I am wanting to read more classics. So I chose The Man in the Iron Mask by Alexander Dumas, and that was written in 1850. I really, really liked the movie when I was a kid. I thought it was awesome, and my brothers and I watched it all the time. So I have a decent idea of what the story is about, and I love those adventure type stories. So I've heard mixed things about the book. I've heard that it's kind of rough to get through, that like I've heard that the first half is amazing, but the second half is torture, and it is long. I think it's like an 800-page book. So I don't know that that's like high priority for me, but if I had to pick something with an M in it, it's like the only thing I could think of. For the letter A, I am picking The Alienist, and this is pretty high priority for me. I plan to read this the first half of this year, but there's two of these books. I watched a little bit of the show on TV and thought it was very, very interesting, but I've heard that the books are better, which I hope so, because like I said, I liked the concept of the show a lot, but I didn't love it. But I've heard that these books are awesome, so I am going to read The Alienist. For the letter D, it was very easy. I chose Dark Soul by Anna Stevens. This is book 2 of the Godblind trilogy. I read book 1 and I really, really liked it. But then I got distracted by Nevernight and just never came back to this. I was going to kind of alternate them, like do a Godblind book, a Nevernight book, like just one a month them all. And then I decided to go straight through on Nevernight, and I haven't come back to this yet. But it'll definitely be within the next couple of months because I really liked the first one and I want to keep going with this series. So Dark Soul for D. For I, you guys, I've been putting this book off for so long and I don't know why. I think mentally I'm waiting for a release date for book 3 of this trilogy. But I love Pierce Brown. I love Red Rising, and so for my letter I, I'm definitely choosing Iron Gold because I want to read this book. I just don't know what the block is with me and why I can't move forward with this series, but definitely Iron Gold for my letter I. For my letter S, I had to remember how to spell my name there for a second. For my letter S, I am picking The Shadow of What Was Lost. This is book 1 of Licanius. This will probably be the next big fantasy series that I start. So after I finish up Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, which I'm reading right now, and tie up any other loose ends I have going on, this will be the next thing I start. And ooh, that is a big book. But I've heard some mixed things about the series, but for the most part, it sounds like the journey is definitely worth any frustrations that, you know, the series isn't perfect. Basically, that's what I understand, but it does sound like it has what could be described as a perfect ending. Everyone says that this ending absolutely blew their minds, you know, expectations out of the water, like ending is supposed to be crazy fire. So it's 3 books and I'm excited to get started on that one here in the next couple of months. For the letter O, I don't have them with me, but I'm going to choose Outlander for the letter O because it is historical fiction. So it's outside of my normal wheelhouse, and I've been wanting more romance. And so this does have some fantasy elements because they like time travel and you guys know the story, right? It's a very popular TV show on Starz, and I have seen the first 2 seasons, and I really, really liked it. But I've heard that the books are better than the show, which of course isn't surprising, but I've been wanting to read more romance. But like I've said in previous videos, I want romance, but I'm not willing to like trade off or sacrifice on quality. I want well-written books and stories that are interesting and characters I give a crap about. And I keep getting recommendations for Outlander. They're like knowing everything you like and knowing the standards you have, but you're still wanting some romance and some steamy stuff. like Outlander sounds perfect for me. So I do want to read Outlander. And then for the letter N, I chose Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I feel like I'm the only person in the world that has not read this book yet, but it is very high priority for me this year. I want to finally know this story and know this book and have my own opinions about it. And then I can be just like you guys and just be frustrated that we're, apparently waiting for more books. But from what I understand, this is similar to some other unfinished series in the sense that the books that we do have are so good and so well done that even if we never get another one, you should still read this book because it's awesome. So I'm very excited about this one. So that's it for my list. That's my name. Those are my books. If you're a content creator, please do this tag. I think it's a little silly, but it's fun. It was fun for me to put together. I liked making this video. But if you don't make YouTube videos, I would still like to see your acronym below. Spell out your name and tell me some recommendations, some favorites, or things on your wish list that correlate with your letters. So thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys next time.